Ladies and gentlemen, on the 7th episode of No Sky Podcast, where we speak about mental health in the Black community, I have special guests today, Miss Nakia Miller, as we go in about a very serious situation that happened in our local schools here in the 757. We're going to get into it. Miss Nakia, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing well, and yourself. Thank you for being a guest on the No Sky Podcast. Like I said, as we discuss mental health and the African American community. So let's jump right into this. For those who don't know who you are, introduce yourself and let them know the reason why you're on the No Sky Podcast.
Well, my name is Nakia Miller. I'm a 757 Hampton native. I finished Kickingham in '98. I'm involved in so many different things in the community, including the Hampton branch NAACP, the Hampton Democratic Committee, and the Hampton Roads Black Caucus, just to name a few. The reason why I'm on today is to discuss a situation that actually happened with my daughter. She is 8. She'll be 9 in September. Roughly about 16, 17 months ago, I received a phone call from the principal at my daughter's elementary school. And he proceeded to tell me that Celeste was being sexually assaulted by another student at the school. And what made matters worse is that this wasn't a one-off. The assaults had been occurring since both girls were in first grade, when Celeste was just about to be 6 and her assailant was actually 7. It's been a rough road, to say the least. Fighting, like, from the beginning, Hampton City Schools has pretty much so been standoffish to the point of obstinate in regards to the things that have been requested by my family for my daughter's welfare. We asked for Celeste to be placed in the school of our choice. We asked for assurances that Celeste never be in the same school as her assailant and that she be provided priority placement. So if Celeste chose a school, a specific school, then her assailant couldn't go there, no matter what the reason was. And then we also asked that Hampton City Schools pay the co-pays for our therapy costs, both for Celeste as well as myself as her support. HCS was 0 for 3. They initially offered to pay for Celeste therapy, which is the equivalent of $15 a month, but they haven't paid a dime up to today for Celeste therapy. Yeah, it's a hot mess.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, my bad. So she was being sexually molested by a young girl that was a year older than she was.
Correct. But they were in the same classroom. So even though the student was a year older than her, they were both in the same classroom.
So that poses the question of how long is this going on? Do you know how long?
It went on for 2 school years. So for all of first grade and for the majority of second grade. We found out the week before the schools let out on pandemic leave. So like end of March of 2020.
So basically almost 2 years into it, your daughter was being sexually abused. And the question that I pose is, how in the world did no teacher know that was going on, first of all? And second of all, what does a 7-year-old girl know anything about any type of sexual anything for that matter, which makes you bring to the point of one that's had to start in the home. Either
Absolutely.
it's not being, her parents aren't doing obviously a good job of monitoring what she watches, or the parents is not doing a good job of not doing adult things in front of their children, because she's picking it up from somewhere. She
Absolutely.
just didn't learn it. The 70s, 70 years old, nobody should be thinking about sex at all. The mind is not even mature enough to, to even take in that type of emotion, if you will. So that's the first question. And basically the school system is doing nothing to help.
At all. And, you know, from the moment that we found out about this, my husband and I were on the same accord. We're not jaded enough to think that this was organic. Either she's seeing something or something's being done to her to make her think that it was okay to do this to Celeste.
That's a good point that you bring up. Not to cut you off, but that's a real good point. Definitely, it does pose the question of, because basically, and we all have been seven, obviously.
Right.
Do what you see or what's being done to you because you think it's okay. So for her to be doing this to your child, somebody's doing it to her, and she's just repeating what she sees.
Right.
It's not. So we can kind of, almost erase the fact that her parents aren't doing what they're supposed to as parents. It's even worse than that. Somebody's doing something to their child, or they're doing something to their child.
Exactly.
And they're acting it out, as that's what they're putting back out. That's what they get. That's what they're getting in return. The parents should be in jail.
Look, if that's what's happening, because I can't speak on whether the parents are doing something, whether they're presenting content to this, this young child that is way too mature for her age group, whether it's a family member. I don't know. I know about my daughter, and I know that is not something that is broadcast in our home at all. And my thing is that in the beginning, my requests were relatively low lifts for Hampton City Schools. I asked for them to place Celeste in the school of our family's choice, which they refused. I was able to get her into another school, but that was with no help from Hampton City Schools. I had to do that on my own. And we asked for them to ensure that Celeste and her assailant never be in the same school again. I don't care what grade it is, because I don't want my daughter re-traumatized because she sees this girl when she's walking down the hall. And they refused to do that. We were still at a position of fighting for therapy costs when my daughter was on her Chromebook, and the only reason why she was looking at this was because she wanted to see whether her little cousin had made honor roll. And when she went onto the school's, onto the honor roll list and the list of the students that had received awards, she called me and she said, "Mom," and she insert the girl's name, "is back at Tyler." I was like, "What do you mean she's back at Tyler?" She said, "She's back at Tyler." And I asked her, I said, "How do you know this?" As she brought the Chromebook to me and showed me her Chromebook, and lo and behold, the girl's name is on this list. So at that point, the demand changed, because basically Celeste went through a good 2 to 3 weeks of meltdowns because of fear. She had anxiety over the fact that, basically this girl was let back into a regular classroom with regular programming less than 6 months after they notified us about what had happened. So, my daughter is crying and dry heaving, saying, Mom, what's going to stop her from coming to my new school? Mom, what's going to stop her from coming to my middle school, to my high school? And I couldn't give her an answer, because if Hampton City Schools is basically saying that they wash their hands of it, and, in essence, they're basically telling me, sucks to be you, then what's gonna stop that? So from that moment, the demand changed from moving her to the school of our family's choice to requesting private school education.
Wow. That's wow. And I have 3 daughters myself, so as a father, I couldn't even. Yeah, I would be in prison. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, if it wasn't for the fact that I have not only Celeste, but I have an older daughter who's who's getting ready to go into her sophomore year at Kickinson, and then my son is going into kindergarten. That's the only thing that kept me out of jail.
Yeah, it's amazing how in the school system, and to those who are viewing, it's amazing how in the school system we have a war on drugs, but we won't have a war on child molestation.
Or
these things happen way more often. Right on our noses, more than we know. And it's so unfortunate, because if it's not something that's going to benefit the school, had it been a teacher doing something like that, or they would have jumped to making sure that they covered themselves and made press and did everything they had to do to make sure their school looks good. But when it's just 2 children, 2 innocent children, to be honest with you, then it's not such a bigger deal, because it's not shining any light on the Hampton City school system. If anything, it's giving them a negative light, if you will. So if it's not anything that's going to make them look good, of course they don't want to, they don't want this to become a public thing. But on No Sky Podcast, this is what we do. So Hampton City Schools will have to get you have to have some answers, because it's going on 2 years now, and still nothing has been done about this. I mean, if it's, in my opinion, molestation is way more important than drugs, because drugs is really a choice.
Yeah, I agree.
Molestation is a lot of times it's not a choice, because it's not something that a child can defend. You know what I mean? So, unfortunately, in today's society, it was not something that's politically correct in their eyes, and it's not important. Nonetheless, on the mental health side of it, this can traumatize. I hope it doesn't, but this can definitely traumatize your daughter, to whatever degree it lingers on in her mind, and that's something that they don't understand. If there was one of their children, it would be a different story.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's not affecting them directly in their household. Then it's just things that it happened. We're going to get over it. We're going to move on, but not realizing that it's a child that's affected, and not only your daughter who was molested, the young girl who did that. Who's to say she's going to stop there?
Absolutely.
God forbid it becomes a pattern. Now multiple children are speaking out, and multiple parents are coming forward, and it can lead to something in a more volatile, environment, because, God forbid, there's parents out here that's not as humble as you or understanding, and they're gonna take it to a whole nother level, and somebody might get laid down.
I agree.
And it's like, now we're going to pay attention, because now there's a murder involved. You know what I'm saying? Now it's a tragedy, and it's pretty well. It was a tragedy when it first happened. When it first happened.
And just to add,
in therapy.
Just to add to what you were saying, you're right. When it comes towards situations like this, it's, you have 2 children who are victims. And my thing is that what my thought process was in the beginning was, as a product of Hampton City Schools, I thought that the school administration would be proactive, and they would try to do what was right for my daughter. As this process has gone on, that's been the furthest from the truth.
So let's get real clear. So no principals, no school teachers, no administration, no superintendents, police, anybody of authority has gotten involved in this situation.
Okay, let me explain.
Mhm.
The principal and the assistant principal were, they're the ones that notified me about the situation. When I found out, and after I lost my shit, I went to the school, and they brought me into a conference room where the principal, the assistant principal, my daughter's teacher, the guidance counselor, and the school resource officer were all there. And my daughter was in an adjacent office. The school had informed me, and the school resource officer confirmed that they had filed a police report. So I thought that we were at least moving in the right direction. They had told me when I picked up Celeste, they were like, you can keep her out of school as long as you feel necessary. She's excused, all that. So I found out about this on a Monday. I kept her home Tuesday through Friday. And then the next Monday is when they let out for COVID leave and didn't go back to school at all. I had a conversation with the guidance counselor, and she asked me, were there any things that I felt that Celeste needed, because they hadn't made the determination on whether they would return to school at all, which actually they did. And I told her, I said, what I'm about to say is not an exhaustive list because this is new. And what I told her was that, number one, if that girl was back at Tyler, then my daughter would not be. And she proceeded to tell me that the student had been suspended for 10 days and that she'd been recommended for long-term suspension or expulsion. And I was like, okay, that's fine. The next thing I requested was that under no circumstance would Celeste go to the bathroom in any of the stalls, because that is where the molestation occurred. That from that point until I said otherwise, she would go to the bathroom in the nurse's office. And they agreed to that. This situation started to get stupid from the moment it transferred from the school to school administration. And that is when the general counsel for Hampton City Schools, her name is Nancy Reeves, she got involved. And from the point that Nancy Reeves got involved, it just got all kinds of dumb. Alongside that, the day that I found out about this, there was a Hampton Democratic Committee meeting. I went to that meeting because, number one, because I planned to. And number two, because I wanted to have conversations with, some of the leadership that I've known for a while, to see were there any resources that I could tap into. As luck would have it, at that meeting, the chairman of the school board at that time, and the current chairman of the school board, Ann Stevens Cherry, was at that meeting. And I told her everything the day I found out. She told me that after she finished talking to me, she was going to be in contact with Jeffrey Smith, who's the superintendent of schools, and that I should receive several different phone calls from downtown, from school administration, in regards to making sure that my daughter was safe and whatever she needed was put in place. For the past 16 months, Ann Stevens Cherry and Jeffrey Smith have been avoiding me at all costs, because it's not like I don't see them at events in my capacity as the adult advisor for the Hampton Branch NAACP Youth Council, and being active with the Hampton Democratic Committee and various other organizations around the city. They avoid me at all costs. There was a candidate forum, I want to say like late April, early May at Mill Point Park. At that event, this was after, no, it had to have been like the middle of May, because it was after I spoke at the school board meeting the first time in regards to what happened with my daughter. At that meeting, ironically, the former chair of the school board, Joe Kilgore, when I was speaking before the board, he interrupted me and said, "Ms. Miller, you've had your 5 minutes, you need to wrap it up." Even though I was talking about my daughter's sexual assaults. At that candidate forum, I saw Richard Mason, and he's currently the vice chair of the Hampton School Board. And I was very clear when I communicated to him. I said, Dr. Mason, I said, you don't have to speak on this. I'm not asking for a response. But what I want to accomplish in this moment is I want you to put a face to this family. And it's not like you don't know me. And at that moment, Dr. Mason even refused to acknowledge that he knew who I was, even though when he was campaigning to be on the Hampton School Board, he was all in my face for my support. And his exact words were, "I've seen your face. I know your story." And then he dismissed me and smiled in my face as if he was trying to win my vote.
Now, what's his first name?
Richard Mason. Dr. Richard Mason.
He's the current Mason. He's a what now?
Current vice chair of the Hampton School Board.
So Richard Mason did not need to be a part of the school board anymore. You heard it first on No Sky Podcast. So if you know Richard Mason, I don't care where you see him at in public, let him know he's horrible. He's disgusting. We don't respect him. If you're not about the children and to protect our young children, then you don't need to be serving on no board. The only board you need to be on is the board that got bars on. We don't respect those who don't protect children, especially when it's this caliber. So Richard Mason, and who's the other person?
Ann Stevens Cherry. She's the current chair of the school board.
So Miss Cherry too. What's her first name?
Ann.
Ann
Stevens.
And okay, and Ann Stevens Charity. Yeah, you don't need to be on the board no more either. You can't respect the fact that we have children out here being sexually abused and molested right underneath your supposedly angelic wings. Then there's no board you need to be serving on. We have no respect for you at all in the city of Hampton or in the state at all. You need to be served on nobody's board. It's people.
And honestly.
There's people like her that doesn't make it any more safer for our schools. I can guarantee you, if this is one of your children, a niece, nephew, or anybody else, you have a $10 million lawsuit, the governor, the mayor, and everybody else. So no, we don't have no respect for them. You heard it first on the No Sky Podcast. We don't respect.
Yeah, and let's add Joe Kilgore. Let's add Joe Kilgore to that list.
Kilgore, we don't respect you either, brother. We have no respect. I can't even call you a brother. You're not even human if you don't respect kids. What type of human being are you? So, on No Sky Podcast, we protect the mental health of all, especially young kids. And for you to know what this young lady and her husband is going through, and to not go to the fullest extent to make sure this never happens ever again, you're disgusting. We don't respect you at all. And if you know this person, if you listen to my podcast right now, if you know them, tag them in it, because I'm going to tag them in it. We can have a conversation too. Definitely.
Yeah, it's my biggest aggravation is with Hampton City Schools. But, you know, I'm not going to act like I don't have some frustration to go around with this situation. The police report in regards to my daughter's assault was filed, but I didn't hear from the Hampton Police Department for almost 6 months.
Oh, time out. Hampton Police Department, once again, you're in the hot seat. We don't respect you either. Yes, Black Lives Matter, molestation lives matter, rape case lives matter. You know, we come in, yeah, y'all too. So we have no respect for you either. You wonder why we riot and burn buildings down, because just like you kill us innocently in the street, you kill us mentally by getting us, you know, having kids molested, and you do nothing about it as if it doesn't matter. So yeah.
Because
no respect for Hampton City at all, period.
HPD closed my daughter's report with no action. And the only reason why it was even opened again was because they had an audit of sexual assault reports that were filed during the pandemic. And a police detective that was involved in that audit saw my daughter's case and was like, I can't let this go. So,
and what do you have this person's name?
Yes, I do. I'm not going to mention his name at this point because but he knows who he is, and I can only thank him enough for
to the officer, the detective that opened up that case. We'd love to have you on No Sky Podcast. We can get you more deeper into these type of situations. So yeah, we're gonna keep this going. We'll keep this going.
But then to circle up, because he is the one that made the request to have a forensic interview done on Celeste. He finished his report and then turned it over to the Commonwealth Attorney, Anton Bell. One of his deputies, her name, I believe it's Pamela Brown, she said that she declined to prosecute Celeste's assailant because of her age. This is my issue.
Prosecute the parents. Somebody got to be
exactly. And my thing is this: you can sit there and say, okay, I don't feel comfortable prosecuting this child because something might have happened with her, so on and so forth.
I don't even think it's possible because she's a minor, so I don't even think
she's a minor. And I understand that. This is my issue with it. Number one, they could have, you know, juvenile justice in itself is a different animal from the adult court system. And they have the ability to put certain things in place to be rehabilitated. So they could have put a CHIS order on this child saying that she was mandated to go to therapy, that they could have brought the Hampton Newport News CSB into the picture in order to provide wraparound services for her to try to help her heal. Because like I said, I believe that either she saw something or something was done to her that made her think that it was okay to do this to Celeste. Third, and the biggest part of this is Anton Bell's office owed us a phone call, an email, a smoke signal to give Celeste a voice in this process. I'm not saying that it was our position to dictate what happens to her, but if he'd even taken the initiative to contact me or contact my husband, we would have said ourselves that we don't want her locked up, that we want her to receive some type of therapeutic services so that she, number one, understands that what she did was wrong, and number two, does not do this to someone else.
Well, Anton Bell, no respect for you as well, or your office. It's a lot of disrespect going on. A lot of disrespect. I'm gonna say this as a father and as a parent. At this point, not just a mental therapy your daughter is receiving. If you guys haven't yet, in my opinion, you gotta teach her that self-defense. You know, anybody touch you, you have every right to take their face by any means necessary. Protect yourself. You know, you have it's not okay to let somebody harm you in any way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You have every right to defend yourself. by any means, by all costs and by any means, regardless of who gets hurt, because you're hurting. So nobody has the right to hurt you. They don't want to be hurt. So, Hampton City schools, wow. I tell you what, if wow, this, this
Yeah,
happens.
this story is crazy. And if someone had told this to me outside of, my understanding, I would sit there and be like, what the hell? But I'm going through it. And like with my daughter, along with her therapy services and her having a strong support system through us, she's also in karate now, and that's something that both her and her dad do together. And we're doing what we can to support her in the best way that we can, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, if Hampton City Schools had even taken any of the initiative to do the right things from the door, then we wouldn't be in this situation at all. Because then I wouldn't have to be concerned of whether these two girls will ever be in the same school again, because I would have an assurance that Hampton City Schools is going to make sure that doesn't happen.
And
I wouldn't have
you don't want to do, not to cut you off, you don't want them to put the whole pandemic on it. Because that's what they're going to try to do. Oh, it was,
exactly.
pandemic was going on. We didn't have this, we didn't have that. That's going to be their angle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's bullshit.
Nobody wants to take responsibility, for anything that sheds light on a very, very sensitive subject. You know what I mean?
And
like if fortunately, I hope that your daughter is able to overcome these situations, because if she's not, God forbid, that this can lead to other situations, and it all stimulated from, an inappropriate act of another student. But I will also say, on the flip side of it, because she is really young, she has time to grow and heal. A lot of I've interviewed people who was molested at young ages, who grew up to be great people.
And I mean, this doesn't speak. This will not be her final act. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that it's beyond unfortunate, but us as a family, we're surrounding her with all of the love and the care and the concern that she needs at this moment. And if we have to, she's in therapy well into adulthood, then so be it. It's going to be what it is. And at the end of the day, it's like this. Hampton City Schools is quick to push the fact that they're 100% accredited in your face. They want you to see them as this bright, shining beacon of education, and they're trying to sell their curriculums to other school districts and, do all of these extra things to make them seem so grandiose. Even to the point where, like, last school year, they had a $175 million budget, and they passed a policy where to change the names of 5 schools in the district. They allocated $150,000 to rename 5 schools, but I'm having to fight them over $120 a month in therapy costs.
Well, once again, if it's not something that's in the public eye, if it's not big, then they're gonna, it's not priority to them. I'm gonna do my part on my end as a platform for media. I'm gonna put it out there, and we're gonna and once I get all their names written down, I'm gonna tag everybody in it, the Hampton City School Board, and all of them, because as citizens, we have a right to speak on the ill treatment of our children.
Absolutely.
Now, my daughter, our oldest daughter, she's 6. She's on the autism spectrum, so she's being homeschooled.
Okay.
because as a parent, she hasn't really gotten to the point yet where she can really explain herself. She's getting
Right.
better. So we keep her homeschooled because I'm not one of those people that can tolerate that. Like I said, I'd be in prison. Somebody would be dead playing with my children. So to avoid those situations, we keep her at home because once again, with my daughter's situation, she's not really able to explain herself for good things or
Right.
bad things. How would we know? You know what I mean? So to avoid those things, as of right now, we homeschool her, and I'm pretty sure if we ever do decide to put her in any school, it will definitely be private, never be
Yeah,
public at all.
It's interesting because my oldest is actually on the spectrum. She's high functioning, but
So
she's
is
on
my
the
daughter.
spectrum.
So is
Yeah,
my.
but she's on the spectrum as well. And like the moment that just, you know, it just ripped my heart into was when my oldest, she's now 15, chose to speak before the Hampton School Board and tell them how she felt as a sister and how she's afraid of whether something like this would ever happen to her and whether they would treat her the same way that they treated Celeste. And there's just, I mean, I can't explain the the frustration that I feel because you know you have this expectation that people that they have ethical and moral standards that are gonna you know that have to come through and show themselves when you have a situation where especially a child is done harm and you know that faith that I had in individuals having, being moral and ethical people has just been shot to shit because, you know, none of the 7 members of the school board or the superintendent have shown that they give a damn about my kid.
Yeah, so no respect for anybody on the school board. You don't have my vote. I don't vote anyway. I probably say that I can care less. I take upon myself to take care of me and mine, but I have no faith, in any of those people. It's all politics at the end of the day. It's
Right.
not something that's making them look good or bettering them to some degree in the public eye. Then they don't want to deal with it. But that's all going to change. It's going to be definitely become definitely become public. Um, we're going to wrap this up. In closing, what would you like to see done for your daughter and your family at this point?
Um, if we do have a Facebook group. If you look up it's Justice for Celeste, and then you'll see the hashtag of the number 8 4 FOR, and then Celeste CELESTE. You're more than welcome to join our Facebook group. And that's kind of the central location where all of the information about the situation is housed, as well as the change.org petition and the GoFundMe. The GoFundMe that's set up is to help with private school education costs because it's to help with private school education costs as well as litigation fees because this is going to court. I tried my best to handle this away from the court system, but Hampton City Schools has left me no choice. So that in itself is going to be a long and expensive journey. So please feel free to join the group. And if you'd like information on the change.org petition or the GoFundMe, please feel free to share it and donate and all of those things. And 100% of the proceeds will either go towards legal fees or will go towards Celeste's private school education.
Definitely. Well, you heard it first here on No Sky Podcast, where we discuss mental health in the African American community. Once again, our city has failed us. So-called politicians, so-called leaders, advocates, if you will, for better and for change, once again, has showed us if it's not about anything that's going to make them look good or put more money into their pockets. They really don't care. And overall, this does cause mental health. Anybody who's been sexually abused, molested in their life can attest to that. You know, this does cause PTSD, anxiety disorders, all kinds of issues, you know, for life for some people. But hopefully this situation we can get it turned around with the help of the community, all people, not just Hampton, Newport News, all the 7 cities, everybody in Virginia, everybody who's listening abroad. We can definitely take this to court to a higher level and get this taken care of, and better protect, you know, our children as they go to school for education and not for pornographic things to happen to them as children and not even as adults. So you heard it first on the No Sky podcast. Thank you for listening. Catch me next time on the next episode. And once again, we discuss mental health in the African American community. Peace.